For the Detroit Lions' third preseason game, they were able to get the win against the Steelers. And while that wasn't a surprise, the play from Jake Fromm definitely was. And everybody's asking the same question, where did he come from? We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, my friends, I decided to go back and forth with myself trying to decide if I wanted to do a live stream or if I wanted to do this kind of a recording. And I ultimately decided that for the basis of the topic I was going to have for this episode, it was probably better to do this. Plus, on top of that, after being on live air for the last 3 hours, I don't know if I could go another 2 hour long talking about the game. So I figured better to do recordings and kind of space it out a little bit, give myself a break. But watching the game for the Steelers versus the Lions, I'm going to say this right now. Overall, the game was very up and down. Not only in terms of how players were playing, but also in terms of how the game started to how it ended. But I'm going to tell you this right now. The way it ended was absolutely spectacular in the sense of we all got a surprise that we were not expecting in a multitude of ways. Let's understand something here, folks. The understanding was going into the game that pretty much Hendon Hooker was going to get all, if not the majority of the reps. And that, according to what Dan Campbell had said, is that we shouldn't expect this quarterback called Jake Fromm to most likely step into the game. Because apparently, according to everybody, including Dan Campbell, Nate Sudfeld wasn't going to play. And the reason why is, well, unfortunate to say it, pretty much the way that it was being portrayed by the Lions is Nate Sudfeld had already secured the job as the number 2 quarterback. And at this point, it was just Hendon Hooker getting some reps. So for Jake Fromm, there really wasn't much of anything for him to do except to, hey, you know what? If we put you in, we put you in. But I'm going to tell you this right now. With the few reps that Jake Fromm had, he made a damn big impression. An absolutely humongous impression. Let's just call it for what it is here, folks. Taking a look at what Hendon Hooker did. I'm not going to include what happened over the first quarter and a half of the game because that was primarily against the Steelers starters. That's not fair. But even if you take that out and you take a look at what Hendon Hooker was doing against the backups, let's call it for what it is. Jake Fromm did a much better job overall moving the offense while he was in there. I'm going to say this right now. Jake Fromm actually looked like he knew what the hell he was doing. Because, let's call it for what it is. Jake Fromm was in the pocket, he stood tall, he delivered strikes all over the damn field, like he was actually slinging it. And the only thing I can say is that for him, it's like, hey, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to play the way I'm going to play. And that's exactly what Fromm did. He went out and he just let it rip. And the guy finished, if I recall correctly, was 6 for 8 and 84 yards. I mean, for crying out loud, I think, Hooker ended 12 of 20 with 112. So it's like, freaking Fromm only played 2 drives. And he pretty much almost had the same production that Hooker had over the course of, 3 quarters. That's rather impressive. Now, here's what makes this even more impressive for me when it comes to Fromm. Fromm is a guy that I distinctly remember because back when it was on Netflix, there was a show called QB1 Beyond the Lights. And Fromm was in that show. And the reason why I remember it is because Fromm was considered in high school one of the best prospects that was coming into college. He was considered one of those guys that really could be something. However, though, when he got to college, it wasn't that he was bad. It wasn't even that he was, decent. He was just above average. And when he was at Georgia, it was like, hey, he played pretty well, but it wasn't enough to really become a top-notch prospect. Because if I recall correctly, he was drafted in the 5th round by the Buffalo Bills. And pretty much ever since then, he's been bouncing around the league from team to team. I know he's played for the Giants. I know he's played for the Bills. I know he's played for the Washington Commanders. I mean, he's played for quite a couple of teams now. And so the fact that when I heard we signed Jake Fromm, I was like, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of news. However, though, after seeing what Jake Fromm did, it's now like, okay, my eyebrow just popped up because now this is a much different kind of a story. Because it's like, okay, I know, boy, I know Lions fans right now. They are, for lack of a better word, they are irate about the fact of Nate Sudfeld being QB number 2. They can't understand it. They don't want to understand it. They absolutely detest that decision because in their eyes, they see Nate Sudfeld nothing more than a waste of space. They think he's nothing more than a waste of a roster spot and he's not good enough to be the number 2 quarterback. And I'm going to call it for what it is. In my honest opinion, he isn't. But the only reason why he's there is because of the fact that he, 1, has the veteran experience, and 2, he has knowledge of the playbook, which is something that Hooker does not have, and it's something that nobody else on short notice is going to have. However, though, the one thing that I don't think anybody was expecting was that Jake Fromm was going to come in and then all of a sudden he was going to have the performance that he had over the last 2 drives. In fact, I was actually kind of surprised that the Lions actually let him throw the ball. I was thinking, hey, you know what? They're probably just going to go out and they're just going to be like, hey, let's run the clock out. Let's just do what we need to do, and that be the end of it. But instead, what they decided to do is they actually let him decide to throw the ball a little bit. And I was like, this is interesting. And the fact that Fromm was completing passes, and not just short little dink-dunk passes, he was actually throwing the ball over the middle, throwing it in tight spaces, putting it with pretty good damn precision placement. I was like, okay here, this is something that is very intriguing. Because I know for Lions fans right now, the ones that absolutely detest Nate Sudfeld the most, they've already got this idea of replacing Nate Sudfeld with Jake Fromm because they just do not like Nate Sudfeld that much. They detest him. But I'm sorry, I hate to be a wet blanket in this episode, but it's not going to happen, folks. As much as, watching Jake Fromm over the last, 2 drives of the game was awesome to see, and actually seeing a guy that was actually, taking command of the offense like he was when nobody expected it, that's the key word. Nobody expected it, or key phrase, pardon me. The fact that we were able to see that was awesome. But that's not going to be enough, folks, for him to take Nate Sudfeld's job. You have to understand something here. The way Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are going to look at this roster, they're going to be like, hey, man, you went out there, you had an awesome job. But let's call it for what it is. Nate Sudfeld's not going to get cut. It's just not going to happen. There's a reason why Dan Campbell said he had the upper hand. There's a reason why the Lions did not let Nate Sudfeld play. They already knew that, hey, he's the number 2 quarterback. The only reason why we're having this whole conversation right now is because, hey, Hendon Hooker needs reps. That's why they didn't have Nate Sudfeld play. They wanted to get Hendon Hooker as much reps as they possibly could. And when the game was pretty much, in their eyes, in a good position, they thought that they'd given Hendon Hooker enough reps. They thought, hey, you know what? He's done a pretty good job. Let's let this other guy go in there and kind of just finish out the game. And I'm going to say this right now. In my honest opinion, I think more than anything, the reason why the Lions put Jake Fromm out there was because they wanted to get some film on him, potentially for other teams to go after him. Because let's call it for what it is. The only way the Lions are going to keep Jake Fromm at this point is if a practice squad spot. That's it. They're not going to keep him on the active roster. Most teams nowadays barely keep 3 quarterbacks. They usually keep 2 and usually have a third one as the emergency quarterback because of the rule change. But there's no way you're going to keep 4. It's just not going to happen. And like I said, it's also not going to happen that the Lions are going to cut Sudfeld to keep Fromm. That's not going to happen either. And if it did happen, I would be absolutely mind blown. So for me, it's like, you know what? I love what I saw out of Fromm. And it was like, I was not expecting that. The fact that he had the command, the precision, I guess you could say, the boldness, if you will, to go out there and say, hey, screw everybody's expectations. I'm going out here and I'm playing my best ball game and I'm going to do what I know I can do. That was something that really caught my attention because that's gritty. To go out there and say, hey, screw what everybody thinks about me. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to give my best performance and give something, for people to talk about. That's rather bold. And that's a really good performance on his part because, hey, even though he's playing against backups, they're still playing a football game. And the fact that he's throwing to guys like, Maurice Alexander and, Caden Davis, Isaiah Williams, all guys that are fighting to make the roster, and the fact that he's making plays like that deserves recognition. And for me, I like that. I like talking about Jake Fromm like this because it's like, okay, this guy has now caught my attention and he deserves to get more of it. If nothing else, I'm going to say this. Jake Fromm just pretty much put himself out on the map saying, hey, I can play in this league, at least as a backup. You have to at least give me a shot on that front. The only reason why he's not going to get it here in Detroit is because we've already got two other guys, and both of them are not going to get cut. At least not this year. So again, Fromm's only going to have a chance to be as a practice squad quarterback, which I'll tell you this right now. If he plays like what he did in practice, like against the Steelers in the final two, drives of the game, we're going to have a pretty good practice squad quarterback that's going to be able to make our defense better. However, though, Jake Fromm is limited. And let's call it for what it is here. Jake Fromm is a pocket passing quarterback. Nothing wrong with a pocket passing quarterback. I love pocket passing quarterbacks. The problem is that our defense needs to be able to have an ability to also deal with more mobile quarterbacks. Because if there's one thing us Lions fans have known over the last couple of years, whenever we've played against mobile quarterbacks, they usually have a decent amount of success against us. So that would be something that would have to be put into consideration here. But when I'm looking at Jake Fromm, I'm absolutely happy for him for what he was able to do with the Detroit Lions because now he's going to get another opportunity somewhere. And that's going back to what Dan Campbell said. He's like, listen, even if you guys don't find yourself onto our roster, that doesn't mean you're not going to potentially get a job because all other 31 other teams are going to be taking a look at this film and they might like what they see and they might give you a job. So in the end, the fact that Jake Fromm may or may not get onto this roster or may not get onto the practice squad for me is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is the young man went out there, he had himself a real damn good game, he showed that he can play, and that I think deserves recognition. And, you know what? The fact he did it for our Detroit Lions, helped us get a win, I'm absolutely ecstatic about. And I think it's a great way to wrap up the preseason. Hey, you know what? Here's a guy nobody was expecting to do anything. He came out, he showed what he had to do, and he put a nice cherry on top of a nice good win against the Steelers. Nice way to wrap it up, for my opinion. But that's how I'm also going to wrap up this episode really quickly. So I'm just going to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, want to highly encourage y'all to subscribe. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure you hit that bell notification icon as well, so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows and the greater the channel spreads. And with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the content. Hope you all had a great time watching the game. Hope you all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.